Until 1995, the CIA paid people to spy using their minds with Project Stargate.
Correct.
One operator claimed to have done over 400 psychic missions. Did you ever sit in a Stargate briefing?
Never sat in a Stargate briefing, but did participate in a long session where the subject was under hypnosis. Stargate was weird to me, and that was managed through the Office of Medical Services. I only worked with OMS, and it wasn't even the physicians so much as it was the psychologists, when we needed to use the psychologists operationally to help us get the most that we could out of a source. The Stargate stuff was just so out there. To tell you the truth, I remember saying to a guy, I don't have time for this. I need to hear it from the source's mouth. I can't sit in a room where some guy's going into a trance, looking off into space, and then tells me something that he probably just made up. So I never worked with it. Hypnosis was different. I've never seen anything like it before. It was the real deal.
Have you been hypnotized?
I've never been hypnotized. Yeah. I'd like
I've
to
been
try
hypnotized a few times. Yeah.
Yeah. What did you know that you were under hypnosis when you were under?
That's a really good question. A couple times. Yeah. I'd say so. Not every time. Yeah. Some people have a really masterful skill when it comes to hypnosis, I would say. Would you say that's the case?
I never saw anything like it before in my life. I flew out to Europe with a psychologist from the CIA and a guy who was a psychiatrist and a hypnotist. And he was president of the American Society of Hypnotists or some such thing. We had a walk-in in a different country. And a walk-in is somebody who literally walks into an American embassy and says, I have information. I want to see a CIA officer. 95 times out of 100. And I mean that literally. There have been studies done. They're crazy people. Just walking off the street. And they want to yell because the chip in their tooth is telling them to, kill the prime minister or whatever. And you say, okay, I'm so sorry to hear that. And you write it up and say it's a crazy person. Send it in just so it's on the system, in the system. So we had this guy come in and he says, I think I witnessed the aftermath of an assassination. And the assassination was like a major front page, global assassination. So we're like, okay, we turn him over to the FBI. The FBI says, he's a nut. We're not interested. But then he said something to me that I thought, how could he possibly know that? And what he said was that he was driving down the highway and decided he had to take a leak. So he pulls off some exit, and the only thing at this exit is a church. And it's just a little teeny tiny chapel. He goes behind the chapel, and there's a big banyan tree, with a giant trunk, right? So he's behind the banyan tree, taking a leak. And this van pulls up, and two motorcycles pull up. The van pulls a ramp down, and they drive the motorcycles into the back of the van, and the two guys on the motorcycles get out. The guy who was driving the van says, is he still alive? And one of the motorcyclists says, he has to be dead by now. It'll be on the news. Well, that was the day of, an hour after this major assassination. That was it. He didn't say, I heard them say, I did it, and my name is, something nutty like that. So we flew him to this other country. We flew out there and met him. And I asked him, what do you want from us? Because clearly he's not doing this out of the goodness of his heart, right? And he says, my wife has breast cancer. I can't afford treatment. She's going to die. I want her to have cancer treatment in the United States. I said, done. So another case officer and I flew out with a psychologist and the psychiatrist. And the guy didn't speak any English. So we translated and we turned all the lights off in the room. He's sitting in a chair like this. The psychiatrist is sitting right behind him. And we're translating, we told him, put your hand up in the air. And he goes like this. And we're going to count backwards to 10, from 10. And when we get to 0, you're going to be out. And he's like, okay. As soon as we get to 0, his hand goes like this. But his arm stayed up in the air. For 4.5 hours. I never saw anything like it. So I'm asking him, can you see the license plate on the van? And he's like this. He goes, yes. And I said, can you tell me what the letters are? And he goes, and like reads off the letters. Like he's squinting to look at the plate. I give the numbers to my colleague. He runs into the adjoining room, calls headquarters. They call the station. The station calls liaison. Liaison calls back. They say it's a stolen plate. I couldn't believe it. It was a stolen plate. So after 4.5 hours, we count back from 10 again. His hand is like this. And we get to 0. And his hand drops down. And he opens his eyes. And he says, what happened? And then he goes, blah, and just vomits all over himself. And then runs to the bathroom. And the psychiatrist said, I've read about this in the literature, but I've never actually seen it happen. And I said, do you believe what he said? And he said, I believe that he believes what he said. So it didn't bring us any close to the killers. But in the end, we all came to the conclusion that he was telling the truth. The whole case fell apart later where he got back in touch with us. He triggered this emergency meeting. I met him at this crazy place outside of town. And he said he had been kidnapped. But he happened to have a little recorder in his pocket. And he recorded the kidnapping. And I'm like, oh my God, that sounds kind of nuts, but okay, let me have it. So he gives me the recording. And it's him. And he goes, wait, what are you doing? And then it's also him saying, I am kidnapping you. I am the Minister of Interior, and I am involved with a terrorist group. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So afterwards, I was like, listen, you had me for a minute. I believed you. But this
is the same guy from the initial case?
Yeah, I said, I'm offended by this. And he says, well, you guys weren't making any progress. And I said, you can't just call me and say that the Minister of Interior is the leader of the terrorist group that we're after.
Right.
With your voice on the tape.
Just to clarify on this story, so you're saying that this guy witnessed a major assassination in person?
He witnessed the aftermath of the assassination.
So he witnessed that specific, okay.
He witnessed them hiding the getaway motorcycles. They shot the guy on motorcycles, went up over the mountain to the highway, got away, and then put the motorcycles in the van and then did whatever with them.